The press conference began as usual. Another interview with Caitlin Clark after the game. Remained seated at the podium, observing her breath following another thrilling. Fans were up and dancing during the performance, and highlights are circulating on social media of her masterwork of 28.12 assists versus the Aces of Las Vegas. The typical inquiries about her were asked initially: shooting percentage, team dynamics, and aspirations for the playoffs outstripped reporters from ESPN and the Indianapolis Star launched typical questions concerning pick and roll execution and defensive tactics. But afterward, Stephen A. Smith held up his hand from the front row, and the subsequent events would depart from the sensational rookie, totally unable to speak and spark talks across the basketball court world about deference, tenacity, and the strength of unanticipated responsibility in the post-game setting for sports journalists. The Indiana Fever held a press conference. Just achieved a significant victory of 9,487 at Gamebridge against the Las Vegas Aces. Caitlin Clark in the fieldhouse delivering. Several analysts were referring to her most full-service professional performance too. Her stat line looked like it was from a computer game. 11 of 18 shots for 28 points, including from three-point range, 6 out of 10, 12. 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and only 2 turnovers during the game's 38 minutes. Indiana advanced to the playoffs with the victory. Position with only a few weeks left in. The press room was bustling during the regular season, with the well-known post-game enthusiasm, interviews with cameras clicking, and notes being written by reporters as Clark asked her questions. Composure, competitiveness, and Holly Rowe of Fire ESPN had just finished inquiring about Clark's progress, chemistry with Elia Boston, a teammate, especially their relationship on the pick and roll that had set Las Vegas on fire. 18 points in the Clark paint is truly fostering trust. Had smiled in response. Elia been understanding of me as I discovered tonight's timing at this level seemed like we were able to read each other's thoughts. When Stephen A. Smith arrived, he was providing coverage of the match for a special ESPN focus on rookie impact players that were captured from the front row. Clark's attention. Smith's behavior had been unusual, silent throughout the 15-minute press conference, which was out of the ordinary for the vocal analyst renowned for his fervent opinions on First Take and his larger-than-life character that Stephen dominated sports talk television. "All right," Clark responded, gesturing to the seasoned media figure who has discussed everyone from Michael Jordan to LeBron James's decades-long career. The unexpected question. Smith slowly got up, putting away his customary dramatic manner and lively actions that had established him as one of the most well-known figures in sports media. His face looked unusually grave, almost reflective as he started talking in a manner that instantly changed the room's energy from regular post-match evaluation to something much more important. "Caitlin, I've been in this situation company for more than 30 years, and I've conducted interviews with thousands of sportsmen throughout all of the major sports that I have covered. Final teams and championship teams, teams bench and Hall of Famers, rookie athletes that went above and beyond, veterans who failed to meet expectations of them. But I have a question for you. Something has been consuming a lot of my thoughts since I began keeping up with your career. This season." The room became quiet, with a somewhat uncanny. Other reporters stopped typing in silence. Camera operators leaned in mid-sentence. Even the Fever's media relations are closer. Employees who were getting ready to wrap up. They froze in their positions during the session. "You know, I've built a wall close to the back. My career of criticizing athletes. It's part of my belief that they deserve it. It's a component of my brand and what I do. How I have been earning a living for 3. I don't regret holding for decades. Athletes responsible for having high standards, but keeping an eye on you this season. Observing your response to the pressure, critique, the expectations, the change from collegiate star to a new level of learning for a professional rookie. He stopped and ran his hand over the basketball, over his face in what appeared to be truly sentimental as opposed to performative. I had to say something in public. Something I ought to have said months ago, and, to be honest, I have to apologize for something. Regarding the inquiry, how do you keep displaying such exquisite beauty and professionalism when others like me, in the press, and I'm particularly speaking about me here, has occasionally been excessively severe and unjustly critical and, to be honest, incorrect regarding your shift to a professional level. So, I must be truthful with you, and all of you in this room have demonstrated you deserve better, because many of us are wrong, compared to some of your coverage, given specifically by me. Clark's moment of shock for the first time in her career, in the workplace, possibly for the first time since high school. Caitlin Clark truly couldn't figure anything out. The player who had dealt with angry crowds on Michigan State's roads handled the tremendous pressure of the Final Four at Iowa, fielded numerous difficult inquiries regarding her choice of shooting and judgment, as well as upheld maintaining coolness during the close examination of being the WNBA's most viewed rookie. What caused history to sit in utter silence? Her mouth opened in what seemed like an eternity. She blinked a few times before closing slightly, clearly processing at times not only the query, but the extraordinary public recognition from a sports, the most well-known and significant media. Her hands, which had been confidently making gestures all over the press conference, was now still. I finally got to see Clark on the podium, scarcely raised her voice above a whisper. The self-assurance that had propelled her through the most stressful situations of her basketball career for a while. Not present. I genuinely don't know what to say, Stephen A. I mean, I really don't say that. Having spoken, the room is still there. Everyone was hushed, realizing they were observing something extraordinary and unscripted in a time when meticulous, controlled communications with the media, Clark's colleagues such as Kelsey Mitchell and Nalissa Smith, who was getting ready to depart for the group bus that halted in the corridor and faced the journalists once more. Room feeling that something important was happening. That is, Clark kept discovering her voice, but it was still obviously emotional. You're being rude by asking me that question. Eager to express what you just said implies more than you most likely think. Because yes, there have been difficult moments. The unrelenting comparisons and criticism. People who are curious about college statistics. Whether I was able to switch from, whether the WNBA's Big Ten is worth the hype, was justified regardless of my readiness for. At this point, she stopped and took a long breath. She seemed to center herself with that breath, but you understand how that critique inspired. It motivated me to put in more effort at the gym, forced me to push myself and study more films, myself to demonstrate my place here, not only to the detractors but also to myself and my teammates, to the supporters who have faith in me. And listening to you admit that now, hearing that you're open to reevaluating and acknowledge that perhaps some of the early criticism was early, Stephen A., it's really overwhelming in the finest way. Smith's subsequent disclosure that Stephen A. Smith gave a cautious nod before reaching into, retrieved something from his jacket pocket, seemed to be notes written by hand, implying that this was not an impromptu moment, but he had been doing something, organizing and getting ready for more. I must say it, and I must say it, since I've said other things in public, openly, that weren't as equitable or as I need to be informed as they ought to have been, to take responsibility for certain instances. He started going over his notes and reading, his voice bearing the burden of sincere regret. On my first try 3 months ago, claimed you were exaggerated, and that around you, the WNBA excitement was produced by sports media and ESPN. For TV ratings, I stated that you required. Must demonstrate your worth for an entire season prior to earning the recognition you were getting, so I asked if you could manage the speed and physicality of basketball players in the professional league. I proposed that academic achievement didn't ensure career success, which is true. However, the manner I stated it was contemptuous of what you previously had accomplished. Aaliyah, one of Clark's colleagues, Erica Wheeler, and Boston have now congregated close to the room's rear, evidently invested in this surprising, and that was an emotionally heated moment, taking place in front of the whole basketball media institution. But this is what I have since then, and this is what the data indicate, Smith added in his tone, becoming more forceful and forceful. You're averaging 8.4 and 19.5 points as a rookie in your league, assists per game. For background, consider the first professional season. Diana Taurasi had a 17.0 point average, and Sue Bird had 4.4 assists in her first season, 14.4 points and 5.9 assists on average. The statistics you're providing place you in first-year players' historic company. He made eye contact with Clark directly, interaction that felt intimate instead of performative, but the data only indicates you've added more to the narrative. General focus on women's more basketball than has been played since the initial marketing campaign centered on the since the league began. Attendance has increased by 48%. When Indiana participates in the league-wide ratings for road television have increased thrice. For sales of Fever Games products that includes your jersey has beyond my expectations, more than the commercial, but by 200%. Impact is the way you conduct yourself and how you deflect off the court. Specific commendation for your teammates on how do you respond to criticism and hardship. You've improved more than simply yourself. However, everyone's play around you. Smith's voice was starting to show emotion, more obvious every time I made a mistake. Regarding you, Caitlin, I was mistaken too. I was mistaken to mistrust your preparedness. Imply that the attention wasn't earned. Was incorrect to use outdated criteria for what I owe you for everything you're doing for this sport. I owe you this league and my apologize to the crowd for not noticing. The sooner everyone else saw that you're more than just a gifted musician who makes a smooth transition. You are a influential person for women's the room's professional basketball. The press room exploded in a sort of that seasoned basketball reporters possessed. Never saw cameras flash quickly as photographers took pictures. Clark's emotional reaction to another journalist started typing furiously and recording, and realizing they were being there for an event that would determine discussions in the sports media for months too. Holly Rowe arrived, having covered innumerable flashes of emotion throughout her illustrious ESPN career, was clearly moved, using a tissue to dab at her eyes. As you keep taking notes, Adrian Wojciechowski is renowned for writing manner when revealing important NBA news. Was using his phone to record the conversation, being aware of its history, importance of suing Bird, who was in participation as a special analyst for ESPN's reporter got up from her chair in the media area and started. Others were encouraged to applaud the gesture, to initially participate in the ESPN production crew, followed by additional reporters and ultimately staff members with Fever, who had assembled to observe the extraordinary interaction. Boston, Aaliyah, approached the podium and touched Clark's shoulder in what, as a gesture of unity and support. Apparently, the gesture grounded Clark, who was still taking in the bizarre aspects of what was taking place in front of several reporters and cameras. Stephen A. Clark stated that her voice was now more powerful and written. You don't have to apologize to me. The purpose of sports media is to be critical. It's meant to make us answerable. It is intended to pose challenging queries and insist that we demonstrate our abilities at the greatest level. What I find important, what matters most, is your willingness to Be truthful and reevaluate when the evidence alters your viewpoint. That requires bravery, which requires integrity. She surveyed the space that several of the other correspondents had critically examined her in her early difficulties in the workplace, and to be honest, the criticism improved me. It helped me. The more